for probably the last 2 weeks, the the Metropolitan Museum had the Oceania wing open since it's been closed since 2021. So all of the island groups, all of the island delegations have been here connecting with the treasures, their pieces, and activating that space for the reopening, which happened last week. So it has been just this incredible moment of connecting again with my people, meeting new people, and bringing like home to New York in a way I never thought was possible. I never knew home could be so close.
Why was it closed since 2021?
So this was the Oceania wing took up the Rockefeller wing at the Met. So it's been closed since 2021 because it was completely architecturally redesigned. And also the curatorial display was completely brought up to 2025. So now it's really inclusive of not only the Met's collection, but it's also showcasing contemporary art practices from each of those specific island groups. It's just starting a new conversation. But it took this long, it took 4 years to complete the new architectural wing.
You think it's good?
Oh, it's something everybody needs to experience. I think New York, particularly from my understanding, hasn't yet had a chance to be introduced to the Pacific past Papua New Guinea. And I think Rockefeller really helped shape our southern part of that world by introducing these treasures from Papua, but didn't go further than that. And the Pacific is far-reaching, emotionally, spiritually, and materially, so that these pieces are now being held in collection for people to experience is something everybody has to see. And architecturally, the stones are the color of that soft pink you find in a clamshell. So it's just this, you really are entering into something special.
What are they works on paper or what are they? Are there paintings? What kind of stuff?
I think when you're there, you'd notice that a lot of the work comes from Earth Mother. So there's every island group, I guess, has a different way of transcribing story. And you'll see Australian Aboriginal pieces that are inscribed into bark, or you'll see New Zealand Māori of where I'm a descent from, carved into wood or into a hard greenstone jade we call pounamu. So anything from the earth is what you're going to see on display from the land and even deep from the sea. The pearls, shells turned into beads and adornments. It's just everything.
I suppose I betray my own ignorance by asking if it's paintings and my own bias too, my own Western bias by asking if it's paintings or drawings or works on paper because that's like the point of reference. But and I think it's so cool to see this stuff that goes so far back, like beyond Western history, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we talk of art history, we think of it maybe beginning either in the caves as a form of language, or for me, I think about my deep love that I have for the art of the fresco in the church. And some of my favorite painters are from those periods. But our stories too talk of the religious synergies that connected the people to the gods. And we still used vehicles and materials like paint, but all ours came from the earth. So we may dye fibers from yellow seeds or submerge it into really dark estuary muds to bring out blacknesses, or use a beautiful kokowai, which was the closest we could get in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to a red, which could come from a berry. So there are worldly alternatives, aren't there, to expressing in color and form and story.
Who are some of your favorite painters?
When you ask other painters that, Dan, do they find it a difficult question to answer?
It is, I suppose, and it always changes, right? Like depending on the
Absolutely.
moment.
It really does change. I think a few that have always stuck by me, and maybe you'll feel that you have painters or sculptors that are the same. They're always going to be in your presence somehow. Is for me Piero della Francesca. Francesca. Uh, he's probably my favorite. It might just be easy to stick with him as my favorite. And I know that the Frick has works of his in their collection. So, just another bounty of gifts that New York seems to keep giving here.
Oh,
Is
it's
that you
amazing.
don't have to
Yeah.
be in Europe to
Oh
see them.
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Have you been to the new Frick since it reopened?
I haven't.
I
Have you
haven't
been?
no no, I haven't been to the Frick in years. I guess I did you see it when it was in Neil Whitney, the Met and the Breuer? That
That's
was
when I first met the Frick.
so you
That
haven't
was
seen
in
it.
the old Whitney.
Oh, you haven't seen the original mansion, the
I
original.
haven't even seen the original mansion. And also knowing that it's like in proximity to the Met as well
Yeah.
means that, hey, you could do both in one day.
Oh yeah.
Do the
Yeah.
Met, Oceania, and the Frick.
Absolutely. That'd be fantastic. I mean, there's so many treasures in the Frick. I mean, they've got some at least one Duccio, just mind-blowing stuff. I actually worked at an art handling company that we would install some of the shows years ago. And they had a feather duster, and I would go around dusting the paintings early in the morning. It was like one of the one of the highlights of my art handling career. And
I
then I
can't
would,
believe that. I imagine like the duster was made from camel's eyelashes,
yeah,
that somehow that duster had to be extra, extra expensive and extra
yeah,
special.
yeah. It was the whole experience. There's actually a bowling alley in the basement that nobody. It's not open to the public. You won't see it. You can't. I don't. I wonder if it's still there with the renovations and all. I assume it is. But have you seen the movie There Will Be Blood
No,
with Daniel Day-Lewis? It's a famous movie about this oil tycoon. Anyway, there's a scene with the bowling alley at the end, and that's kind of like what it looks like.
oh my
But
God, I'm gonna love
yeah, but so you just moved from New Zealand pretty recently, right? A couple of years ago.
a couple of years ago. Yeah,
How are you finding New York?
I love her. I love her very deeply. I think that are you a native New Yorker or have you moved here as
I,
well?
I've moved here. I'm naturalized now. It's been over 10 years. So
Okay.
I think it's 10 years until you're like a naturalized New Yorker.
I
But I've,
hear this.
yeah. And certain things I find get, like at first I had a hard time with because I grew up in kind of the country in the Midwest. Just the amount of energy and the noise and like can be distressing a little bit just on your nervous system. And like once you sort of like get used to it, there's like a low level underlying, almost like, background radiation, if you will, kind of all the time of all this stuff. I mean, you could get it more into that. Like, there's all kinds of like frequencies going on, but you can get into like the woo woo quality of that and really go into that. But there is a lot of energy and it's intense. I'm not sure, I hope you're finding it. I wonder how are you doing okay, like on a physiological level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I can because I can balance it in with the woohoo.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
for me, the balance has to have both. But it's incredible to me what the city makes you discover about how you lean into her through the years. And in two, I've just been so grateful, I guess, to her for what how she's taught me to grow and how to live within that pace that you talked about. The first day I arrived, a friend told me that within the bedrock of Manhattan, the entire island of Manhattan, sits three crystal types, and you're nodding, so you know this.
I've heard that.
I
Yeah.
think this is uh, it was a very gentle way for me to enter into New York, knowing that below me, I was going to be supported no matter what. And I really do carry that thought every day, or the fact that we can we can walk through Central Park and see that quartz glittering across those rock surfaces is something really spectacular. But I really do feel like she's looking after me. I do really love it, and I'm still here after 2 years, so that's a good sign.
You were in New Zealand for most of your life before moving here?
New Zealanders have a tendency because we live almost sort of exiled in a way from the rest of the world to be travelers. We really love to go and live places. So I have definitely lived in other countries with the thought that I might move there permanently. So coming here didn't seem like a big thing to do. But I would say that for the majority of my life, I was Auckland born, which is it isn't New Zealand's capital, but it's its largest city centre, and have spent time in the very beautiful Taranaki as well, in Ngā Motu, New Plymouth.
Your early years as an artist were spent in New Zealand, though,
Yes.
and you went to school in New Zealand.
Yeah, I studied at Auckland University. And then very quickly after went on my first big overseas experience to live in the UK before coming back to New Zealand.
Had you always sort of thought about New York and what precipitated the move here?
I'd met a friend just before I moved here who I knew at art school. And, I was straight out of secondary school or college and going to university. And she'd told me that then and there, back in my early 20s, I'd said, I'm always going to move to the city. And I'm sure we all do. But it wasn't till our borders opened back in New Zealand and we were allowed to travel again that I'd needed a bit of a big inspirational trip. And so made plans with a friend to hit Los Angeles, New Orleans, and then I was going to finish in New York. But I just could not get New York out of my system that last trip. But I had previously in 2006 done an ISCP residency when the residency program was based in Midtown in the garment district. So I was familiar with her in a little way, but nothing like the 2 years that I've spent here. So it was me deciding after not being able to get rid of this feeling of this attraction I was having to New York that I should find out if I could attempt to find a way to be here. And everything fell into place. It's a really complicated visa system for us, particularly for artists. But it worked. I found a way to navigate through it and get here.
New Zealand was shut down pretty intensively during COVID, right? And when did it reopen?
I feel like it was shut down, but there is this ongoing legacy here in New York I mean, it was really the trauma, right, of what you all had to go through during your shutdowns. Now that I'm living in small apartments, I could understand what that life must have become for you all here when you're used to being a part of something that's so thriving and energetic, and to just be shut away behind a door just for one part of it must have been really extreme. But we had, I think, at our longest, a 100-day lockdown. And to be honest, in New Zealand, I mean, it is like a paradise. We have backyards and we have open skies, and it 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 isn't really, it wasn't really too much of a big ask for me as an introvert extrovert to be told to stay home for 100 days. I was happy to garden.
Yeah, certainly. It certainly we and as an artist, we're so lucky that we, like you have to be very comfortable with seclusion.
I find that it's the most valuable part of my day, just being able to tap in, tap into the work process, tap out of the world, and at that most energetic part of the day, get some work done, and then maybe socialize a little bit to gain some energy back. But I don't know if you feel like both the introvert and the extrovert.
I do.
I'm sort of like sitting there too. Imagine being an introvert in this city.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing that's really the greatest amenity that this city has is the people, the energy. You know, without that, I mean, the museums are great, and you have all these other great cultural things, but it's the people that make those things, and it's
Absolutely.
about connection.
The connection and even the immediacy of it, that it doesn't have a legacy necessarily. You will meet a lot of people once, and that's it. And you know what, Dan, I sort of enjoy meeting people that way. I enjoy meeting a lot of people one time only, but having a lovely core group that I can go to regularly.
Yeah, yeah, it's liberating like that. Like you don't have to feel, like there's this anonymity that the city has, but at the same time, it can be as personal as you want.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. I love the anonymity here. Like
yeah.
it's one of the first gifts I felt the city gave me because of that anonymity was freedom. This freedom to be and this freedom to move and this safety to do it in. And then off the back of freedom came things like bravery, which I could bring into the studio and into the art practice. And these are all free. These are all free things in New York that you don't have to pay for. It's like the gift from the city, and they've been incredibly helpful to go forward with my practice here.
You already had a pretty significant art career in New Zealand before you came here.
Yeah, I have. It's like 25 years of
Yeah.
practice, like a singularly focused practice. So it's I guess I can be no I'm known for my practice in New Zealand and Australia.
So did you find that there was a change in terms of like perception just on a social level? Like when you're there, you're known, you have this established career, and then you come here, and you did you feel relatively like m more anonymous or less? Was it an adjustment in that way?
I think I've always hidden behind my work as a private person. I haven't wanted to stand in front of it or be louder than my work, and I think a lot of artists work that way. That's where I feel most comfortable, is letting my work be the personality, my work be the face, the physicality, and the emotion that people meet. So I think a lot of times people think they they're meeting you via what they know of your work. And I'm okay with that. I've never really understood completely the structures and hierarchies of being known by your work because it's not why I make. So when I moved to New York, it was I was indifferent and comfortable with nobody knowing what my practice was. I could just be me.
I think we have to talk a little bit about glitter.
Okay.
I think you told me briefly, maybe you could tell the story of the Maori Queen. You were using glitter and there was a bit of backlash, right?
There was a bit of backlash. Uh I guess generally I could say Māoridom, like many First Nations cultures, has a fight to find a place. And New Zealand is a little different in that we had a treaty that was signed between England and a confederation of Māori tribes in New Zealand that has helped guide and protect the identity of all the things we consider treasurable, like land ownership, language, and even art as a visual form, as a visual talking form. And within that idea of mana and prestige, the use of something like glitter, which really is so deeply imbued with its own stereotype, that's sort of completely the opposite to prestige. You know, we read it as a craft and child's play and drag and carnival. For those two experiences to be placed together really did upset people that I was playing with the integrity of culture and of genealogies gone past. But it wasn't until people had realized that this work was really in celebration for my father's passing, and that each painting was really a reflection of him, that they understood the premise and the purpose of the works. And it really helped ground glitter into a different type of material with a different type of meaning and a new reading. And before all of this had really happened, the Māori Queen did see these works at a Pacifica festival on the island of Palau and told me how much she loved them. And it's a simple gesture, right? It's just a very simple set of words, but they were words that really did help carry my authenticity around where these had come from and why I was painting them. So it was a very special moment. And she wasn't the only one. There were a few other mentors who I really looked up to within the Māori arts world, art practicing world, that were supportive of seeing Māori scroll patterns and kōwhaiwhai being taken into new materials.
So there was generally some, after this moment, would you say that this was the moment that it became that there became more acceptance after that?
I think it took I think it took the awareness of me trying to control the narrative on the work and start to reframe glitter out of stereotype and reframe it into ideas around Māori philosophy and concepts of Māori identity, of breaking down glitter as a material into its basic component of being a reflector of light and what light as a space occupies us as Māori and what it means to us, and trying to allow that reading into a new material to give us insight into breaking down a material into being a new type of material.
What was your initial inspiration for using glitter? Did it come from the natural world and from light, observing light?
Yeah, I'm gonna because I'll be able to share with you what light is to us. But I grew up on the west coast of New Zealand. Now, something that I think is really beautiful about my sacred home is that the entire west coast has black sands, and then the entire east coast has white sands. And then right in the middle is like this beautiful painterly green of native forests that connects the black side to the white side. And the black side where I grew up was so iron rich that it was boiling to the feet, but really sparkly in the sun. And when that sun was also hitting those ocean waves, as a boy, I was really growing up in a glitter landscape. And so that's why those are some of my best memories growing up, being able to grow up as a beach boy. But I definitely think that's why I want to bring those materials back into my practice.
How far away did you live from the beach?
We could see it. It was that close. It was all of I can't even tell you in yards. I can only say it was like 50 meters.
That's amazing.
It was very close. So going to sleep at night was just the sound of the sea scrolling. It was a very beautiful experience to have as a child.
Yeah, and I'm sure that that experience still informs your practice in the studio, right? Your sources. I was about to ask you your just sources of inspiration.
I think it will always come down to light. And I think it's now that I'm 2 years into New York, I'm really fascinated by how our stories connect to your stories, that connect to their stories, that bring us all together as one. I don't see myself as like an indigenous painter creating indigenous works here. I think that all First Nations, all indigenous peoples have a voice that links us that can be easily shared and understood by the world. But I do think at the premise, at the birth of it all, sits the Māori philosophies or the Māori ideas, creation stories around light.
What are those?
It's so lovely to be able to share this with you. Um, these are very well-known stories that not only connect the land, but they also connect the sky. And our creation story goes like this. I feel like we need to settle in with a rug, put on the
Uh,
fire,
I'm in.
light a candle.
I'm here.
Um, we call our Earth Mother Papatūānuku, and we call our Sky Father Arangi Nui. So Papa is to Earth and Arangi is to Sky. And at the very beginning of creation, they both sat in a very tight embrace, and all of their children, all of our gods that represent entities like the forests, war, peace, food, sat as children within that darkness. And one of the children, Tane Mahuta, who is our god of the forests, he needed some space. So he went about growing and separating his parents, which he managed to do. And we talk of this deed as the first hara, the first misdeed upon earth. But within that misdeed came greatness, came the coming of light. And with the light came three very special gifts: mātauranga, knowledge; whakapapa, genealogy; and tikanga, which is protocols. So that, in essence, is the creation of light, the beginning of the world, and the fact that light is at once a misdeed, but also a gift, is where we begin our philosophies around light.
Why is it a misdeed?
It's a misdeed because he separated our primeval parents.
So
He
it's almost
forced
like
them apart
it's similar to like the Adam and Eve story. Then you get this knowledge, this gift, but at a price.
at a price. But everything involves sacrifice, doesn't it? To get anywhere, to get anywhere, there has to be a spoil. But with this separation, with him separating that incredible love bond between Earth Mother and Earth Father, the Ranginui was lifted up to become the sky, and Papatūānuku, of course, stayed to become the earth. And there was this time in that embrace when both the northern and the southern hemisphere skies could be seen all at once because they were the extensions of Ranginui's arms. But during that first hara, that first misdeed, the limbs, the arms and the legs were ripped off the Sky Father, which meant the skies were then separated into two hemispheres. And only New Zealand, Aotearoa, was going to be able to see the southern skies and southern constellations.
There's a real reverence for nature, and that you see it's like nature is personified in these myths in a way that I think is very healthy.
I think when you get there, you'll understand why. Like thinking of New Zealand before it even had any habitation, human habitation, had no predators, and was a land completely given to birds. And these were birds that were flightless and birds that could fly. We had birds twice as tall as an ostrich with a brain the size of a chicken. That was, of course, flightless, and our iconic kiwi bird, which has become, along with the silver fern, our national symbol. But could you even imagine, Dan, for a second, what a dawn chorus must have sounded like in a country with no predators, just given over to birds?
Transcendent,
Absolutely. And I imagine it was just so
kind of,
loud.
kind of, kind of wild too. I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A bit like New York. Maybe there
yeah,
was like
yeah. It was like the New York for birds.
it was the New York for birds. So
Bird
really,
York.
I've just
Yeah,
gone from one bird, New York, to
yeah.
a
That's
people New York.
that's right. So take your pick. You've been a New Yorker
I
your
have
whole life.
somewhere down the genealogical
Yeah,
line,
yeah,
I
exactly.
have been.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of birds in New Zealand. A lot of
Yeah, they're
yeah,
things that I miss very much.
yeah.
Because there's so many different native calls and just so many species, are split between the North and the South Islands that prefer different climates. So yeah, there's so many and a lot of those feathers, of course, were incorporated into very special cloaks, which I think, the Met will slowly start to show in their collections. But it's amazing how much they were a part of our lives as a food source and a sound, but they also became forms of adornment and cloaks and treasures.
I wonder if this is true. I mean, nobody really knows, but the anthropologists think that that languages came from hearing birdsong. It's
I
song.
wouldn't be
Language.
surprised.
Yes, and so I think people think that music, or sorry, that singing came before language,
Wow.
which came from birds, of course. But there is something magical about listening to birdsong that is, it does something. There's a real like, there's an effect on your brain that's very real. And I'm sure in New Zealand, you probably get a really heavy dose of that, right?
I do. But I love this idea that, I seem to think of birds imitating us, but we were the ones imitating them. And that could have been the pathway to language. But yeah, birds. I went home last October and it was one of a list of things that I was really looking forward to hearing again was just, even I think the loudness of New York takes away at the dim quietness of sounds that I miss, which is, just like wind in in long grass, or the sound of tree branches battling together, or a bird. Those really quiet sounds seem to disappear here. So it was nice to sort of be back and settle into those quieter moments that I'd really grown up with as well.
I was struck. I should briefly tell the story of how we met. And it was in an
Yeah, that's
opening
nice.
at a gallery, and I was wearing this. My mom had called it a Hawaiian shirt, but it doesn't. It just looks like it has like a Pacific Islander sort of design, like a tribal design on it. And I never have worn this shirt in public. It was my last clean shirt. I don't like to wear shirts with logos or any decals or whatever on them. So it was my last clean shirt, and I happened to wear it out that night. And Sophia McKinnon, who's also from New Zealand, right away was like, "Oh, you should look." You think you were standing close by, and she's like, "Oh, you should talk to Reuben here. I wonder if there's some like maybe some Maori designs in there." And so you sort of picked it apart, and you could tell exactly what it turned out. It wasn't actually like any specific nation that made this design or whatever. It was just like a weird composite of like some Hawaiian and some like maybe some Maori design. So, but you knew exactly what each design was. So I was quite impressed. And then I found out that you'd worked with these designs in your work.
Yeah, it wasn't it amazing? It's because I saw you come in and I saw the designs on the t-shirt and I can't help but think, oh, is he from the Pacific? Where's this guy from? Or what is going to be your connection to the Pacific? And it was a beautiful connection because it was through your mum. Your mum had bought it, and it was your last clean tea. But it is amazing how when we think about language structures or visual language structures, that images carry meanings and purposes. So what I could tell you about the designs, which we call kōwhaiwhai or scroll patterns, which are the only painted elements we use traditionally was that they were all from the sea. That all the Māori components in on your t-shirt were from the ocean, but I think there were also Hawaiian, Samoan, Fijian. So it was like Moana Nui Kiwa, the great sea of the Pacific, that was all embedded into your t-shirt.
It's a very generous way to put. It's very, very generous of you to put. I would say it's like a weird, like some random designer and some who knows where just put these designs together. But I appreciate that, and but it led to this conversation, and it also led to discovering your work, which is absolutely beautiful. And
Thank you.
you initially started, and I'm also struck. I was looking at some of your work by there's so much scale. I mean, there's like a real, there's like enormous, you've done murals, you've done public commissioned sculptures, and just enormous, huge, big stuff, big stuff. So you use a lot of imagery of animals in your work. What animals that you use have been inspiring and why do you use those?
I have used a lot of tigers, which, are in no way indigenous to New Zealand, but I do like to look at them as an exotic other. I use them as an exotic other, and I like to use them in my work paired with another painting to set up a type of natural relationship where you look at predator and prey or male and female, especially the ideas of land and sky, up and down, just the premises or purposes of duality. But I think now the practice too is exploring different forms of animals based around the constellations of the southern and northern hemispheres.
So you've used a lot of cosmic and cosmic imagery and stellar formation, stars and so forth as well. Um, and to me, it makes a lot of sense with, especially in the sort of the context of what you've been talking about, like culturally, that there's like not just a reverence for the earth, but a reverence for the cosmos.
Yeah, a lot of us, I mean, my iwi, Ngāti Rangitihi, has a genealogical beginning in the stars. And I know that these stories too are shared very closely with Native Canadian Cree nations, which I just find very fascinating. And, I'm sure if I researched it more, there'd be many, many Indigenous cultures that talk of having a genealogy that goes back to that. Um, we're heading into a very special season of stars in New Zealand that celebrates our new year. So our new year, our Māori New Year begins June 19th in New Zealand when the Pleiades rise, or the stars of Matariki rise up above the horizon to signal the collection of winter crops as we start to go into deep winter. So it's still incredible to share the South, even though I'm in the North. And I've been really enjoying looking like literally through American lenses, like Hubble, back home, finding myself here in the North, but still finding ways to navigate south through my stars.
Is it always on June 19th, or is it just that this year it happens to be
That's just because of this year. So
because
it's
this year?
only going to be based on
Oh, I
the
see. Because the
celestial marker.
when the Pleiades rise, I
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
it's only based on them. So it usually isn't too far from, but this year it's going to be June 19th.
Are there celebrations in the Maori culture in New Zealand for
Yes.
this? This is a big deal right now.
It's becoming a bigger deal. It actually was officiated as a formal public holiday for the nation 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And I have made a very large crystal canoe or a traditional waka form that is going to be put back in front of our Auckland Art Gallery in Matariki celebration. So I'm already going to be home without even being home.
That's great. That's
Oh, I
yeah.
know. I feel the same.
So you're obviously you have a powerful connection to the rhythms of life in New Zealand. And so right now, does it feel weird to be in like almost like high summer when right there it's like the dead of winter?
It feels weird being able to do both.
Are you sure you're there and here? You're spiritually you're there.
I can sort of do both.
You're sweltering here in the city.
I think when I first lived here, if I think of life between here and there on a set of scales, and I'm Libra, right? So I'm going to think of it in terms of scales. The weight of home was definitely the heaviest part of the scale. And this year already, I've really started to feel them balance. And right now, I do feel like I'm living quite succinctly between both countries. They're at a balance. They're at this really lovely equilibrium that I quite like. But I would love to see the scale shift so America becomes heavier. And at my age of 52, there's so little I can give up now because I've experienced so much from home. But I do want to see what happens when I adjust that balance to here and start learning and taking in the culture of America uh, as a bigger part of my life and a bigger part of my world.
What sort of things might you absorb more from American culture that you'd like to?
It's been an incredible way to learn within this microcosm about humanity because everything is here all at once and people really fascinate me. And I'd like to think that art and music and language all have a dynamic power to bring all people together somehow, somewhere, some way. I can I tell you a story of what it was like to move into the microcosm when I
Please,
first moved here?
please.
The coming from a country with 5 million people and living in a city of Auckland, which probably has 1.5 or 2 million people, to a city this size and this small, I really struggled adapting to ignoring the amount of need that's on the streets here in the city. And I left a lot of family need behind. So I was already experiencing it, and wasn't something that I could ignore. And I managed to find a place in the Lower East Side, which is harder than you think when you're without credit ratings or anything substantial to even, ID you here in America. But being here in the Lower East Side, there is a lot of need down here in addiction and mental health and homelessness. And I just could not bring myself to ignore it. And I was trying to figure out a way to navigate it. And so the idea I had was to start a small journal book. And I would give money if I felt safe and was asked for it in exchange for something to be written in the book. And it really helped me settle into this space because I could actually engage face to face and name to name and in a small conversation with people who needed something, but I didn't want to freely give it without an exchange. So
Mm.
there are all these ways I know I've been formulating and using to feel comfortable in the chaos. And that particular example really helped me feel comfortable here.
That's the right direction, you know, and I think more than the money, you offered the people just a moment of connection, which I think is the thing that's greatly missing the most. And it reminds me of the other day I was walking down the street and there was a few dollars on the ground, and I was about to go pick it up, and this guy snatched it in front of me, and I was like, "Oh, nice, all right." You know, then I told him the other day I found a 20, and then like last week I found $100 bill on the ground so I told him this story, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I work in sanitation. I found a 50 on the street the other day," and we connected for this moment. And I realized after the fact that the most valuable that $3 that he got was it was worth every penny just to have that moment of connection just between us. We shared a little moment together, and I think that's what that's such a beautiful. I think that's what you're bringing people on the street.
After your 10 years here and after my two, connection is it's a very magical thing, isn't it? When it's organic, because I think we can have many forms of contact that are work related or just trying to live and get by in the city related. But when you can really have a person to person moment, which sounds absurd in a city this big, like a little heart to heart over something, it becomes so magical, doesn't it?
And it can happen all the time. Every day there's opportunities for that.
There is, but they don't seem to happen.
It's rare. You almost have to, you kind of, I don't want to say force it, but the choice is up to you if you're open to it.
Yes.
You can be open to, but if you're too open, I mean, you have to be a little careful because,
You want to shut that down.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
wonder,
yeah.
I wonder if that, because it's something I've had to learn too, is how you navigate openness here. And I mean, through your 10 years, have you noticed openness close down a little bit more as maybe needs have increased in
Yes.
the city? Like, how would you describe what you've seen when it comes to connections here?
Well, from personal experience, when I first came here, I was dead broke. Had like I came here with like I maybe like $1,000
I
in the
wanted to
bank,
say amen.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah.
Amen, Dan. We're all with you on that.
Yeah. But there's a vast difference between between broke and poor, t
Yes.
totally different thing.
Yeah.
I had opportunities, plenty of opportunities. I had some people here, some connections. I could get to work easily. I'm a privileged white male, it was easy to find jobs. I'd been to grad school already and so on and so forth. But I found that as I got more successful, not necessarily in terms of my art career, but just that I could sustain myself better, had a little more disposable income. I I had to be more aware. Like at first, it was easier to relate to people that don't also are broke. But then I find that you can become disconnected the more you have because you think you think that you become a little more just subtly in a subtle way you can, at least in my case, this is what I found. I'm sure it's different for anybody, but the more you have, I find that sometimes the less generous you are because I don't know what it is. But I try to
They're
be,
probably squirreling it.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
squirreling.
yeah,
So you
exactly.
can,
Yeah, it's like,
just in case I found
yeah,
myself going here again,
that's
I'm going to be ready. It's
that's
just
it.
called
Yeah.
adulting, Dan. That's all that is.
It's like, come on, that sucks. I don't want to be doing that. I want to let's give it, It's like let's I mean you have to be, there's a I just it's I think it's about finding a balance, of being generous, but obviously you need to take care of yourself. You need
Our
to
mutual friend,
yeah,
Sophie, calls it the economy of New York. And it's that moment you realize where you fit economically into the city.
that's good.
I
That's
know
good.
well, we know she's smart.
Brilliant.
I thought it was really clever, but also it wasn't concrete that the city is one of opportunities. So it does mean you are able to rush from this situation to another, but be perpetually uh perpetually rich for being brave enough to be here.
Do you know who Ajahn Chah is?
I don't think so.
He's a Thai monk,
Okay.
and he said that a rich person is anyone who's content.
Yes.
And that seems to be like the if you can measure your wealth by how content you are, how happy you are with your life, then you're going to do a lot better, because it's really never enough. I mean, for all of us, it's the money, it's even experiences too. And experiences is also a form of consumption. And it's not necessarily bad, but it is something to be
Yes.
aware of. It's like you could. it's not enough. I want to go here. I want to go there. I want to do this. I want to do that. But if you can just be content and be happy with where you are, on whatever level in life, and realize that the best things aren't the thing. I mean, you can't hang on to anything, all this stuff, you're just, even the moments, the little jewel moments that really stand out in your mind will also be sort of erased at some point. And that's not necessarily bad. I think it just enriches the whole experience. But New York is a place where you can really, it's such an intense place that you get this, like, there's such a real richness of experience that's really it's made with it's like a tapestry woven with all the people, the consciousness. It's like it's all consciousness.
It's all there, all that consciousness. And I love this idea of can you just tell me what the monk said again he said about contentness?
Ajahn Chah said, "A rich person is anyone who's content."
And I love that. Like I started thinking about content as something physical. And then the more you spoke about it, I realized it's probably more a type of presence or a faith or a trust or a surrender rather than a contentness to being in place.
Mm.
And
Ah,
I maybe frame it that way too, because I think it's one assured way to live healthy in the city. You sort of have to just trust, you have to have faith, you have to surrender, and sometimes you might have to do a bit of prostitution, but that's just the way it rolls.
it can be a tough place. It can be a hard place, and you see evidence of that. But that's a great way to put it, that it's a surrender to it, and it's faith and surrender. And surrender, I think, if you have the same thing in your studio practice, it's the same, right? Like being an artist is really an act of faith, that you trust the process. And being in New York is the same thing. And I think it really, and there's so much creative, even if you don't go out, you're still tapping into the creative consciousness of the city.
I think that you have to go out.
You
I
have to go
think
out.
it would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
crazy not to go
It would
out.
be crazy.
You
Yeah,
just because there's enough FOMO
yeah.
in the city as it is. There's just so much exceptional talents that is being shared with us. You have to get out.
We all have a hard time getting on the train, and like going into the city or driving, and whatever you're doing is like always a bit of a slightly traumatizing. So if you can get past that, and part of it is like letting go of the self a little bit, and just surrendering back to surrender, and just being like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna have this experience, and it's always different than what you think, right? Like the night I went out, when I met you that night, I was actually going because another friend of a friend, or a friend of mine who I know, an acquaintance that I was hoping to get on the podcast, was supposed to be at that opening. But I was on the late side, he was on the early side, he was gone already. But then I met you that night and we're having this conversation. So it's like you have no idea where it's going to lead.
Yeah, I love the surprises
Yeah.
like that. I think it is just that thing of getting out the door, and maybe, as artists, we we maybe spend the majority of our time behind a door, just doing what we need to do, doing the thing that we love the most. And sometimes we've just got to come home and shut the door again, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's double doored sort of life
Yeah.
situation, which it always makes me laugh. The thought that I need the space in the studio, but look, it's been a really big day. I just need some more space. So just
Yeah.
closing this door again.
Yeah.
What sort of career is that? What
It
career have we chosen here?
it's crazy. It is. But you couldn't do anything else. There's nothing else you could do. You have to do it.
I totally agree. I
The,
think that we are magicians, us artists, and we bring such magic and such a magic language to this plane and this world. And it is so incredible to see the best of the bests, the best languages in the city on display, because it is at the core, a very creative state. Like there are just so many practicing artists, and I'm talking across all forms, living in New York as well, isn't it? Isn't it? It's unfathomable. It's It's just so big.
So many, so many. Often I'll go to an opening, and a lot of openings I'll go to with like friends or whatever, and I know that 90% of the people there are artists.
Yes, easily, right?
Oh yeah.
Because they've got paint on their hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but they just,
There's almost,
I mean, you can tell, because you're
you can
one,
tell.
you're also one. And
Yeah.
it's like an energy thing, right? There's like a magnetism there, and you attract other artists, and you want to,
Yes, I
yeah.
definitely believe in that law of attraction. I think that attraction works. Absolutely.
I was reflecting upon just the importance of being an artist. And this is something that's not talked about too much because it's poorly understood because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to articulate. But I wonder if you could share some thoughts about that, about what the importance of it is, just on a, not necessarily on a literal level, but you could talk about it abstractly, or just what do you think?
Oh my God, there's so many things that could be said. And I think the idea of the value changes. So my value around it now has changed in that I think of my work as sort of portals into another space and another time. They're carrying the language they held at home is a different type of language that's held here. And it's the same language, it's just seen and heard and interpreted incredibly differently. So I can have work that contains these Māori philosophies that can be greeted and seen and understood very cleanly and clearly back home. But I bring this language here and they become a portal into with a different reference, with a different cultural reference that can still be claimed. So I think right now I would describe painting as portals.
So when you feel like when you show them here, the context, it's a different context. So how is it interpreted differently from when you show in New Zealand?
This may sound naive, but you know that the world is exposed to America a lot, and the world takes up a lot of those influences. And so New Zealand, of course, is very grateful for everything that we receive from here. But I hadn't quite realized how much of a culture America is, past all of the experiences that America shares with the rest of the world, and those being creative, music, movies, all of these sort of things, art. And what I've found is that I haven't changed the content of the work at all because I can't. I can't reframe it. But I've found I tell the story of the work differently because I feel like I have a very important role here because I am the only Māori, the only artist of Māori descent living in New York at this time. Off the back of the opening of the Met, who who has a responsibility to make sure that voice upholds the values, the prestige of the generations that have come before me. And it doesn't sit heavy on my shoulders at all. It sits very lightly and it sits very comfortably, but I'm very aware of how important my place is here. So when I'm articulating any stories from home, I'm making sure that, like today, they're stories that everybody knows. They're stories that I think are important grassroots knowledge forms that we can all start from, and that they're things that can be accessed because of the culture of what I see as being culturally America. It's also like, should I keep going or have I said too much?
No, no, no. That's great. Would you say you identify as a cultural ambassador for Maori art?
Yes.
So that's a pretty big responsibility. I would,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
feel it though. I don't feel the responsibility because I can only be me. Like I can't be everybody, and I can't be everything, and I can't be everything Māori either. So what I bring to the table is just my my heartfelt love for it from my perspective. And I do think that other Māori who live here feel the same way. But we have beautiful generational groups of Māori who live here. And importantly, we've got some young ones coming in who are the first ones to go through a complete Māori education system. So their knowledge is so exceptional, and they're going to be really changing the world.
Well, I think there's so much that native cultures can offer the world. I mean, there's really like it's a way to live a lot more responsibly with with the planet where there's an understanding, a much deeper understanding in many cultures of the impacts of equilibrium, balance, and I think there's so much to learn there. And I think just going back to your work, and I mean, it's not necessarily that it's not didactic, you're not saying, oh, this is what you should do, but maybe it sparks an interest in Maori culture, and then people look into it more and they say, what's going on here more? What are some ideas that, that Maori culture has sort of perpetuated through, like what are some things we can get from this, and a lot of the stuff now is not as mystical anymore. It's not as incomprehensible. I think there's a lot of people that are getting interested in ideas that were even 5, 10 years ago considered pretty woo, that these days are more socially acceptable. So I think this is really a great time to sort of be introduced to the culture.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I think this new generation and their integrities have already blown up in social media. And I'm sure you saw Hana Rāwhiti Māpai Clark's haka in the New Zealand Parliament. Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
It's a lot of your listeners may have seen it because it was very big on social media, and she performed a vocal haka with the Te Māori Party doing the physical haka around her as she tore up a piece of paper in Parliament. And she's only in her 20s, but is an example of this new generation that are coming through. And what I think it's bringing with it is indigenous. Gosh, I mean, it would only take one word for me to say, but what is that one word I want to use? Because we've always had integrity. We've always had a voice. We've always been seen. But I guess I'm going to say indigenous legacy back to the table. And it isn't a war of power, it's a war of balance. And it's a voice of being heard. And yeah, that's what I'm seeing coming through with the young people. So these people are here in New York too. So watch out.
So you said that there's a completely Maori system of education now for younger people what does that entail?
It looks at Te Ao Māori, at the Māori world. And well, I mean, I didn't go through the education system, so it's that education system, so it's hard for me to describe it. I mean, I did train as an elementary school teacher, and it was that year, that very first year in the year 2000, that the course began for those teachers, for those kaiako. And I was, but not in the 1 year postgraduate diploma that I chose to do. So it would have been interesting if I decided to pursue teaching, if I would have gone down the Te Ao Māori, Māori kaupapa route, or if I would have gone down the normal teaching route. And I went down the normal teaching route because I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an artist. So I would just say maybe, as somebody who hasn't been through the system, that its whole approach is more like you've talked about us, environmentally conscious, very conscious of the idea of genealogy. starting from here, but taking it right back to those primeval parents, back to Earth Mother and Sky Father. Because once you acknowledge that our genealogy starts there, you can't help but include everything in your life cycle of the world and being a part of you, both inanimate and non-inanimate. Is that even a word?
Yeah.
Non-inanimate.
Inanimate, inanimate.
Inanimate. That's what I want. So that's how I would probably describe it as somebody who hasn't been through it. But it's also about using song and chant every day. The language is very poetic and conceptual. It's being able to think and work in those frames. I guess this is the kindest I could describe it without knowing.
That's beautiful. That sounds like a much better education than the one I got. You
A
know,
little bit
not
more holistic,
yeah, holistic, I should
like
say. I don't, yeah, yeah, exactly.
and I think for me too,
Yeah,
it's I grew up, my father grew up at a time in New Zealand where language was punishable. To speak your language was punishable. And so for me, I grew up without that language, but nothing in the school system to support it if I wanted that choice, if I wanted to learn about that language deeply. And now I can, in my lifetime, look here and see that now we've had a generation go right through their whole schooling system. They lived the dream that I hoped I had, but my language instead turned out to be painting and sculpture.
did you learn the Maori language then?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I did learn it, but I found it very hard to retain it without speaking it all the time. So I retain concepts and philosophy, but I can't say that I'm like fluent at all.
It'd be hard conversationally.
Oh yeah, I'd probably understand it, but I think most people who can't speak their language say that. That's like our default. Yeah, I can understand it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I can't really speak it. I don't want to be that guy. It's something I've learned to do, but the truth is it's something I don't have. And I think it's being able to honor that place and say, well, this is what I can give, and then you can go to the others to get that. Like I hope people here don't look at me as the representative and my work either. It's just it's one facet on the beautiful Māori diamond that is.
I think, this is one of the things that art does that's so difficult to articulate is that it's like a way you can sort of know yourself a little better. What is it? What is it doing? What's happening there? Like it's happening on a consciousness level, like I think it's just so important. So I appreciate the work you're doing. It's extremely important.
Thank you. I mean, is your work personally too like that? I think it's always biographical in a sense, but does it help you understand yourself better? Does it give voice where there might be no voice?
That reminds me of a de Kooning, I think it was de Kooning who said he used art not necessarily to impose order upon the world, but to impose order on his own life.
But how about for you personally?
For me,
Yeah, because that's where the question was aimed at.
indeed,
I'm
for
sorry,
me,
I
yeah,
framed it in a
not at all.
way that
No, that's great.
might have been
Yeah, yeah.
confusing, but I
What was
meant
the
it for you.
so what was the question again?
Yeah, what was the question?
If
It's Sunday, eh? It's Sunday. It's really humid in New York. Our
yeah,
brains are like
yeah.
slightly
I think
melted.
we're doing pretty great considering,
Me too.
that's
I don't
pretty.
even have my aircon on. I guess it was like, well, what language do you find within your work for yourself? How is your work autobiographical and how does it help write your biography?
That's that's a great question, and I think it's a question that you have to keep asking over and over because it changes as you change, right?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
More recently, I've been really obsessed with various paintings of enunciations historically. Like Fra Angelico is one I'm doing right now, so I'm doing these sort of riffs on uh, Northern Renaissance painting and other. I just did a Hans Memling version of an enunciation that's at the Met, and sort of, but they get weirdly like abstracted, and there's a little bit of AI, but not too much, just a touch to kind of like, and I've been inputting some older paintings from older bodies of work, and they sort of are kind of composites in a way. But anyway, but it really, to me, comes from these experiences and my sort of realization that knowledge, that teaching and learning is maybe the best thing you could do, the highest, I don't want to say occupation, but there's something, I think these enunciations are really they're metaphors, they're showing you this is like the highest teaching coming down. It the message. It's just a simple story of a message that Gabriel's the messenger delivering the message of the virgin birth. This is like that's the story. But there's something going on that's like outside of the literal narrative. There's like a teaching happening, some divine teaching, some otherworldly or some sort of even alien or whatever interdimensional teaching. I don't know. But we're here, like, I think things are just way weirder than we can possibly comprehend. It is just plain bizarre what like the whole thing. If you look very, very deeply, I think not just the physics, but there's just so many different things that we're unaware of. We can only perceive a tiny slice of what's actually happening. There's so much on a microbial level, on a on all these other wavelengths that are occurring.
Could
And
you
what it
describe what you mean by that? Because I agree with you completely. But what could those things be?
what are they exactly? What like what? Like there's a kind of shrimp that has like way more rods and cones in their eyes than we do, so they can perceive different colors that don't exist to us. What are those colors?
Yes.
Like what are
Yes. Oh, yes. Don't you want to see
what's
those
that?
colors?
Yeah, what's
I had a
that?
dream once of a new blue, and it was the most beautiful dream for me.
What was it?
Well, I can't tell you because it's
Yeah.
this 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 blue that I'd never seen before.
Doesn't exist. Well, maybe it exists somewhere, but you can't perceive it, right?
It has to because my dream managed to surface this beautiful blue.
Oh yeah. What
Like
and
it was like, and I still remember dreaming of this blue and thinking, wow, where do I get that blue? But this blue just doesn't exist.
that's amazing.
I know. Well, you're lucky when you dream in color, I think.
That is lucky. Yeah, and the
That's the
dreams are really interesting, aren't they?
maybe dreams are the space you're talking about too.
I
Because
suspect. I
that
I
that's a
think
very
that
tangible way to talk about those things, those unquantifiables that you said in the sentence but were describing. Because I think they exist and I think they are definitely graspable and tangible, but maybe just not physically. We just can't necessarily experience them the way we think our five senses are supposed to. We need to take ourselves beyond five and get up to 12 or something.
absolutely. Have you ever done any plant medicines? Like ayahuasca or anything like that?
Oh, that's so funny because I do have done plant medicines, but they were plants. Like they were native New Zealand remedies for healing, and
Not
and they were
psychedelics.
really incredible. Yeah, I've definitely done psychedelics, but I've never done ayahuasca. Ayahuasca sounds so ceremonial. I'm just like I was going to say a whore. That's,
No,
it's
no.
like, no, I'm not a whore. I'm not a whore. I just like, back home we would just do the stuff you buy on sheets.
Oh yeah,
we don't
yeah,
need,
yeah.
it isn't, I mean, I don't even know if we can get ayahuasca at home. We have mushrooms. We have
That's good
like
too.
little blue
Yeah,
meanie mushrooms.
yeah. They just
That-
you could probably just find them, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly growing at my home in the garden.
Oh yeah.
So the people who are renting my
You
house
should,
said, I'm like, so what?
you should know what they are for. Make sure it's what that, make sure
I,
it's not
I
something else. Yeah.
know, most definitely. I mean, luckily, it's going to be at their risk, not mine. And it's unlike America in that they can't sue me just because those mushrooms were on my property.
Yeah.
We believe in responsibility.
The reason I asked is because you were talking about all these different senses that you would need to perceive reality as it is, or just like the deeper sort of layers of reality. And there was an
Yeah.
experience I had with some plant medicine at one ceremony that I saw this object and I know that this object didn't exist. It existed in like another dimension. It was like four dimensional. And I couldn't, I was like, was trying to like see around it, I guess, and find out what it was about. But I knew that I didn't have the apparatus to perceive it. You know, I could
Wow.
see this, I could sense this thing, this object. I think Terence McKenna called this the impossible object at the end of time, something like that. I don't know if you know who he is. He's
Oh,
like considered to be like the Timothy Leary of the 90s.
oh,
And
okay.
fascinating guy. He passed away unfortunately like maybe 10 or 20 years ago, but he has a lot of great like trip reports and very entertaining and interesting stuff. But that
So
was
he
that
was describing the same shape that you were
I
seeing
suspect it
your
was a
plant
similar
medicine
thing.
experience.
I suppose, but it seemed like that was a good way to describe it, like an impossible object at the end of time. I know it's like I was like, if I could only like see in four dimensions or perceive in
Yeah.
four dimensions, then I could see this thing. And then it was just kind of a moment where I realized how truly limited we are, but we have to function within those limitations, and we have to use what we've got, right?
I only think you're limited by what you think you're limited by. Like I think all of that is available to you if you believe it's available to you. Like I don't think humanity is beyond greatness and the veil, I think I'll put it, at all. I think it's all extremely possible.
Yeah, it's
I
within
don't think
yeah.
anything is hidden. I just think a lot of stuff is kept secret.
I think it's about control in some ways, you know, not to be I don't want to take us down like a paranoid road necessarily, but I think people and there's no conspiracy theory. I think people just don't know what they're doing because it's difficult. We're always influenced by we're in a culture that's very consumer oriented, you know, and I also am a consumer and I'm always you always have to battle your own impulses in some ways, but I find that if you're able to let some of that stuff go, you can access these places. These are places and states that I think require surrender to access.
There's often It's often described as madness, right? And I still think there's a very fine line between the identity of psychotic madness and spiritual enlightenment. And almost like the extremities that we've talked about today of, earth and skies and all these beautiful opposites, or even sacrifice to get something like Adam and Eve, those sort of visions and sights, I think, are are quiet for now because they sit within the space of either being psychotic or spiritual, and nobody really knows the difference sometimes.
I think very advanced practitioner meditators seem like crazy people to a normal person. But there's a world of difference. It's vastly different between
They are
somebody.
so vastly different, but
Yeah.
when you approach both of them, they seem so similar. But I agree with you. I think that they may look similar, but they're at completely different ends of the scale. And I think in a way, it's a beautiful way to talk about it because we should feel harmony and kindness to those within psychosis. And we shouldn't be shoving them at one end of that ladder, of that hierarchy, and then adoring and honoring spiritualism and putting it at another end. They both seem to, I'm talking about them on the same platform, which I love. And to me, they're both sort of conjoined.
That's a great way to put it. I think these hierarchies and these sort of judgments are often harmful, and you say the people that are mentally ill, but actually they're the same as us. You know, everybody, and that's the not even crazy, but the reality, the truth is that we're all the same. You know, we all. But
Well,
it's hard.
people,
Yeah, it's hard to practice. All beings and entities too. It's hard to practice when you're out there and there's a guy yelling in your face on the street, or there's a guy who's just peeing on the sidewalk, right? And just has completely lost the sense of any like propriety or whatever it is. It's just a difficult place to navigate. But I think being aware and just having compassion, and I think your project of getting a little note from people on the street is a very worthwhile endeavor.
There are definitely ways to navigate it, isn't there? And yeah, it has been really dramatic to have to live within that world here. But two, I think a lot of the world is really suffering from need right now. That's what I feel. I just feel like I see that a lot. And New Zealand is experiencing the same things with huge epidemics of a drug we call P, which I think might be meth.
What is it? It's a stimulant?
Yeah, it's synthetic and it's highly, highly addictive. I do think that maybe it's meth here, but
Interesting.
it's taken over communities and destroys families, but there is no help available around it. And so I moved to America and heard that the new president may do something about that, or what I thought was he may be interested in really trying to shift the availability of health in this country, but it's bullshit. That's not even going to happen, is it? Because all of the money has been taken away from the resources that are there to protect, serve, help, and rehabilitate anybody who's in need.
Oh yeah, yeah. Even places I work sometimes at a food kitchen in Park Slope,
Oh, do you
and
really?
yeah,
Man,
it's
that's
well,
awesome.
it's not it's not completely altruistic because I get credit for working. Do you know the Park Slope Food Co-op?
No,
It is the best produce, in my opinion, and many others as well, you can get in the city. It's legendary. Actually, I did a podcast with the founder, Joe Holtz.
really?
Check it out if you're interested. Check it out.
Wow.
It's
Yes, of course.
legendary. Formed in 1970 out of all these social movements that were happening in the 60s. It was really about. It's really kind of anarchist in the best possible way. In that, I mean, there is still a hierarchy there. There's staff, but if you want to shop there, you have to work there.
Right.
You have to work. You have to do it's like 3 hours every 6 weeks.
Is this produce that is collected uh like close to expiry?
No, it's mostly local. It's fresh, all really
Oh,
great and
really?
fresh. Yeah, the reason it's so cheap is because it's all member labor.
Wow.
So it's quite fresh because there's such a high turnover. There are maybe 17,000 members. So so every time you come in, it's like new stuff, fresh stuff from local, like upstate farm, like upstate within. They say they try to source things within 500 miles or something. I think
Okay.
something like that, or a few
So
hundred
that's
miles.
too considering carbon footprint and transportation and travel and keeping it local, keeping
Keeping
the
it
projects local and
relatively
supporting
local.
local.
Yeah, yeah, as local as they can. A lot of it comes from
Wow.
like maybe New Jersey farms or Massachusetts, whatever, just this kind of the East Coast area. I mean, obviously it's not all local, but great organic stuff. But you can get if you to do your shift, you can work your shift to the soup kitchen.
Wow.
And there's one called Chips, which is awesome in like close to the area in Park Slope, Brooklyn.
Is it
But
called chips?
it's called Chips. Yeah, I can't remember what it's.
CHIPS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what it stands for, but they're great there, and it's just a great thing. But they're losing a lot of their funding is getting cut or has gotten cut, and it's like people are relying on this funding to eat to survive. I think what people are failing to understand if people can't eat, there's going to be very serious problems. If people can't get their basic needs met, nobody's going to be happy. Like
Yes.
it's not going to work out for anybody. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're just all connect. We're all connected. The whole thing.
We
Yes,
really are. And you really feel it here, right? Because you realize how you are a part of a bigger consciousness.
that's right. Yeah, and you're tapped into it. But I wanted to say, speaking of that, I wonder if you felt since you live in the Lower East Side, and there is a lot of mental illness, and there's a lot of addiction, and there's a lot of issues. I've felt that I'll work down there sometimes, and I'm aware of the permeability of consciousness, and it's distressing to be so close to people that are having these very serious issues. And it kind of bleeds into, I'm not saying that you're going to develop these issues at all, but whenever I go down, I'm just like, oh man, it's like some sometimes you feel like you're getting punched in the face, you know,
By the reality
by the reality. Yeah. And somebody else's sort of, I guess you just got to be really careful of, yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real. That's really interesting. You feel it down here because I think a lot of like, I haven't lived here for a very long time. I really admit that. But a lot of people describe this area as being predominantly a young, wealthy, uh, sort of neighborhood. And that may exist, past 10 p.m., when the clubs are all opened. But I don't really see a lot of that myself. Like I don't see a lot of people wearing their inherited or family wealth on their backs. I just see like that edge, that really rough edge, but I'm really attracted to it. I think I feel really comfortable when things are a little rougher. And it's been, I may have mentioned earlier that it really was such a great teacher for me when I landed here on how to navigate just the street from my place to the subway because of everything that was going to be there. When maybe it's like having humanity put in your face like that, you can't help but not look. And I don't want to be a person that looks away. But I do border, like the Lower East Side borders so many beautiful neighborhoods. I really love Chinatown. The Bowery is another really interesting neighborhood too, I think, in New York that has a lot of need. And even in the history of Manhattan has always been that, hasn't it? It's been an epicenter for the men's homeless shelter, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Down by the new museum. I think it's still there.
It's still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It is still there, right,
Yeah.
right next door to the new museum.
Yeah, it's wild. So you get this mix of like cultural elites and homeless people, and you're just like, it's wild. It's wild. But it's amazing if you just drive, if you just walk or whatever it is, just within the span of like half an hour, you can go from Chinatown. It's like all this culture of this, these amazing restaurants that walk through Little Italy, and then you're in the Bowery, and then all the art galleries, and you've got just, it's truly just at the very least, it's extremely entertaining to look at, to absorb. Like sometimes I'll just walk around Manhattan and be like, "What? This is just like what is even going on here?" Like
I
walking,
know. When you get home, right? And you're like, oh my God, I can finally sit down. What just happened? And, when I'm pretending to be a tour guide and knowing Manhattan, I will do it around here because you will slip between, like Soho and Little Italy and Chinatown and the Bowery. And it's just, people can really see it. They can see just going from one street to the next how quickly everything changes. The personality of that neighborhood is right there in their face. And I guess I love that we start here. I've always thought, what better neighborhood to arrive in as an immigrant than the Lower East Side? This seems like such a great place to be in, just to be a part of the truth of the history and the energy of what's been contained here.
classic. I mean, you got the Tenement Museum there, which is like,
Yes.
it's like a monument to have you been to Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty and all that stuff?
I sort of have I think I did when I arrived at Times Square, and I think I pulled the plug on all tourist
Yeah,
activity.
yeah. Save it for when you have family visit or something. You know,
Yeah, if I have to, it's going
if
to
you
be
have
mother,
to,
brother, and best friend. But I really sort of pulled the plug on all of them. And I don't know, would you say Ellis Island is a tourist mecca?
I don't know if it's a tourist mecca, but I did it years ago because my grandparents came through there from
Oh my
from from the
goodness.
Ukraine back in, I want to say, like the early 20th century. So my sister and my dad and I had gone like that when I was like in my 20s. But just the history of here, it's like it's such the energy of it. I feel like you really get a sense of that going in certain places, like the character. Go to the Upper West Side, and you feel this old New York. the Museum Mile, you're getting like this Gilded Age. These Gilded Age buildings are still there. The Met,
Yeah.
the Frick, and you
Yeah.
get this real taste of history in that way. And it's a young history, of course. It's not like going to Europe, but it's the energy of it, and the creativity and the spirit, I think, is something that you can really tap into.
I guess that's why people call it, one of the greatest cities in the world. And, when friends have come through, they really have wanted to do the things that are the markers of this city from the experiences shared from America. They are Times Square and the Empire State and all of these things. It's like I've seen it on TV, so I have to see it in real life. And I still to this day can't believe in such a compact place that the people who choose to live here can live separate from all of the adventures that people who are visiting can have here in those really popular places. Like the two don't seem to mingle or mix at all. And it's like, how? Well, I guess nobody wants to go to Times Square once you've been a few times, unless you've got to get to Broadway, right? But I'm amazed at how in such a small island, they're not going to really mix.
That's why I like to do that kind of stuff when I have people visiting because I can see it through their eyes. Like,
Oh, that's beautiful.
or going to them. So my mom and my aunt came a couple months ago. We went to the Met, and it was a whole different experience because my my aunt was just like blown away by everything, and just like, and like you could tap
Really.
into that energy. So it's really awesome showing people around the city. And we just drove through Times Square, and we didn't really get into the too heavy tourist stuff, but I just took them to places
Yes.
that I like, but I could see those places that I already enjoy through a fresh lens.
Do you feel do you feel a sense of pride when you see like your aunt's response? Like do you also not only enjoy seeing the world through a new lens, but do you sort of feel proud that you live here? Like you're a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a I mean it's not an easy place. So if you can find a way, if you can carve out a little way to make it work,
Yeah.
and well, especially in your case, for me, it's I don't have to deal with like the immigration stuff and figuring out how to navigate that. For you, I think it's more impressive because you're coming from a completely different place, a completely different country, and you're basically crafting a new life here.
I think the first time is always the hardest time. And then, once you've got your head around it, because that visa took me a year to compile. I mean, that's a commitment in itself. Just to say, yes, I'm going to do this, and then have to spend a year getting that visa application together.
Before you came.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
wow.
that wasn't a guaranteed acceptance either. But
Did
it
you have
took
to
a year.
prove, did you have to like prove that you're a professional artist and show
Yeah.
all documentation of your shows? And I'm
Like
sure you,
compiling 25 years of stuff. But
amazing. Yeah.
proving it was legitimate as well. So it's like a document on top of a document. Like it was just proof after proof after proof. That just took so much time. And then I wanted it to look pretty. I didn't want it to just be printed A4. So, I got a bit silly, but I do love like the terminology of the visa because it's called an exceptional talent here, which should be a t-shirt upon visa acceptance. There should be this t-shirt that says exceptional talent that we could at least have for the money we spent and the year it took, to access this incredible city.
On the back, it could say, I moved to New York and all I got was this t-shirt.
All I got was this t-shirt and three
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Until I get married. I don't know.
That's good. That's good. So what do you have anything coming up? Any shows? Anything that
It's
we should
amazing this year. It's so incredible. I really love that I've fallen into the Pacifica community here, from Hawaii right down to New Zealand. So, um, me and a friend, Dan and I are supporting a Hawaiian dance troupe that have a residency at Governor's Island at the moment. They take over as performers on July 23rd. So up until then, I guess we're supporting their residency by having work in that building on Governor's Island. I've already had some group shows, but I have some work in a group show at High Noon next month in July. I have a solo exhibition in Auckland, New Zealand, with my gallery, Gal Langsford, in September. But I guess around the constellations and stars, I have it's 10 meters, so like a 4-story sculpture of a traditional Māori canoe. And it tells the story of the apparition of a phantom waka that appeared 11 days before the eruption of Mount Tarawera. And Mount Tarawera is where I genealogically connect to. So we connect to places by rivers and mountains, by landscape. And it displaced my tribe to the coast. But I wanted to make a work that was a new apparition to a new future. So the canoe, instead of sitting horizontally, sits vertically in the sky, almost like a compass point. And we used, of course, the stars to navigate us. So the work is completely made of crystals, and the crystals reflect a new type of navigational constellation within the architecture that it sits. It's like a work you got to have a look. You got to go and have a look
What's the
at it.
piece called? I'm gonna look at it right now. What
It's
is it?
called Guide Kaiarahi.
How do you spell that?
Kaiarahi.
So it's a
It's almost
yeah, that is
invisible too,
incredible.
right? By photo.
Yeah, that
Like
is
it
amazing.
almost isn't captured. It's almost
Wow,
a
yeah,
type of
people
phantom.
people should definitely look at this. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, so it's made of real crystal.
Yeah, it is.
That's beautiful. Wow, it's so amazing that you've been able to do these ambitious projects like this, like, and I suspect that this requires a very sophisticated level of fabrication. So you have to design it and then it gets fabricated. Do you work with studio assistants also?
I did at home. I think studio assistants are just so incredible. But I was finding that I was becoming a director and not a maker. So when I moved from New Plymouth to Auckland, I decided not to have any assistants, and just I was starting to see my assistants' lines in my work, and I know that nobody else would see that, but I wanted a lot more ownership over my practice, over my mark making and the energy I was putting into paintings. So when I moved to Auckland, I just decided to sort of go solo again, and I'm doing that back here. I'm doing that here in New York because I couldn't really afford to have assistants just yet. It'll probably happen, hopefully happen down the line, but it's nice just to be a maker again and not a director in the studio. But a big work like that too takes a lot of balls because New Zealand always had a very limited budget. Our philanthropy is very, very scaled back home. And usually a public sculptural piece wouldn't have a budget larger than 90,000 New Zealand, which is only 45,000 American.
So
That's not big.
this must have been a much bigger budget than that.
Yeah,
This,
I
yeah.
like had this idea for this work, and I just thought, you know what, I think this would be really beautiful. So I'm just going to put it to the trust that funds this major sculptural work outside uh, one of New Zealand's very important galleries, and just see where it goes, see where it lands. And it landed.
That's great. So you got a lot going on. Before I forget to ask, where's the best place to find you?
Well, I have a streamlined website, which is reubenpaterson.com. Reuben Paterson with one T. because it's like both the first and surnames are pretty tricky with letters, and I know my vowels sound a bit different too.
We'll post a link on your bio, but
Could we do that? And then my
absolutely,
Instagram, I think,
of
is a little
course,
bit more. I'm quite a private person, but there's a lot of work in there, so that would be lovely. You
absolutely, and
could
I
share
think
that, and people
people
could
should
see it.
definitely see.
Thank you,
Of
Dan.
course, thank you,
People
thank
should
you.
also see your work because I think your work is it's so charmed and so loaded and so driven, like, but it also has a solace about it that I hope a lot of people get to look at your work too, because it's truly captivating.
Thank you for saying so.
It's easy to say
Thank
because
you,
it is.
thank you for that. We'll have to schedule some studio visits at some point in the
Oh
future.
my God, hell
Where
yeah.
I'd love that. Where are you now? Where's your studio?
Uh, guess.
Are you then you're in Brooklyn?
Yep.
Bushwick?
Yeah, you got
How did I know? I
it.
somehow surmised.
It just seems like the place that the studios are at.
Everybody's down there. I'm
Like
sure.
Bushwick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's that.
Everybody, very famous artists. Like it's incredible how we all share that the edge of that neighborhood, right? The semi-industrial part of that neighborhood is ours.
It's amazing. I think it's because there was a lot of like there was a big garment industry
Oh,
up
was
there.
it?
So I think
Yes,
so. And I think that there's still a lot of the buildings. So they
you're
have the
right. It
studio
was a
buildings.
garment district because the building I'm in used to be a sweatshop or a sweat, just make sweaters.
Ah, yeah.
And I came along, he's like, Reuben, did you know? No country could keep up with the orders of cotton thread that we needed because we were just making so many sweatshirts that New Zealand stepped up and we bought all of our cotton thread from New Zealand. And I'm like, well, that's bizarre because we don't really even have cotton trees or like cotton plants. Like, why on earth? What was that? He said, well, look, it doesn't matter, Ruben. But I just want to welcome you in as the first New Zealander to occupy. Don't
He
get
was
caught
just
off
saying
guard.
that. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just welcome as the first New Zealander to the building. So it's
Nice. I won't keep you further, but I want to say I really appreciate you taking the time today and speaking.
thank you
And
for keeping me today, Dan.
thanks.
Thank you for being able to let me talk about things that are very dear to me, and thank you for sharing things that are really dear to you as well.
Of course, that's what it's about. It's about connection, you know, it's about having these moments of shared. I mean, you can't really articulate what art is necessarily, what it's doing, I should say, and what the intention, what the purpose of it is, but it's clear that it's necessary and it's something that's extremely beneficial to so many people, you know, and to me and for we're having this conversation because of it.
I just hope that I hope it's a good conversation for you and for the listeners. I hope it ends up being a podcast you wanted it to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is. Actually, before we go, is there anything you'd like to add? Any final words to impart?
Oh, you know what? Often when Māori talk about Māori things, we like to finish our conversations with a song. And for whatever the weight of those words may have been, or for whatever dimensions those words may have traveled to, a song helps sweeten them and bring us back to our place. So maybe you would let me sing a little tune or a little waiata to sort of bless us back into place.
Please.
Well, this is a little waiata about, since we've been talking a lot about togetherness, it's a waiata about the way our native tree, the kahikatea, only grows together as a community. So I sort of feel like that's a great little waiata to sing about when we stand together, we're strong together. E tu kahikatea, hei whakapai ururoa, awhi mai awhi atu, tātou tātou e.
Thank you, Ruben.